Texas State House has passed a plan to redraw the state's congressional districts, and Israel has given final approval to build thousands of new homes in the occupied West Bank. Good morning, I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. The Texas State House has passed a plan to redraw the state's congressional districts. The GOP plan aims to send up to 5 more Republicans to the U.S. House in next year's midterm elections. This could help the GOP increase its control over Congress. Texas House Democrats, led by Representative Jean Wu, fled the state for 2 weeks to try to block the plan, but many returned. Wu says the redistricting plan is something that will affect all Americans.
This is not over. We will continue fighting. But what needs to happen is we need every American, every Texan to start paying attention and start learning about how we got here.
The measure has moved to the Republican-led Texas State Senate. California lawmakers will meet today. They're considering a plan to send Democrats to Congress. Now, Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis wants the Trump administration to give his state an additional congressional seat in the U.S. House. He claims Florida's census results were not accurate and Florida is owed this seat.
The Attorney General has written a letter to the Census Bureau, the Commerce Department, copying the White House, saying, please fix this remuneration and award Florida what we're entitled to, an extra seat in Congress.
This move could add another Republican to the U.S. Congress. Israel has given final approval to build thousands of new homes in the occupied West Bank. Critics say the long-delayed settlement project will bury the chances of a Palestinian state. NPR's Jackie Northam reports from Tel Aviv.
The so-called E1 settlement project has been on the drawing board for more than 2 decades, but pressure from the U.S. and other nations prevented it from becoming a reality, until now. The controversial development, which involves more than 3,400 housing units, will be built on a tract of land east of Jerusalem, effectively slicing the West Bank in two. The Palestinian Authority called the development illegal and said it would destroy the chance of a 2-state solution. Israel's ultra-right finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who approved the plans, said the E1 settlements will erase any notion of a Palestinian state. The number of settlements has quickly grown over the past few years, despite international condemnation. Jackie Northam, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A Russian missile has hit an American electronics factory in Ukraine, causing extensive damage and injuries. This is according to Ukrainian officials. NPR's Greg Myrie reports the attack came as Russia carried out one of its largest airstrikes of the war.
President Volodymyr Zelensky and other officials took to social media to report the airstrike on the U.S. factory. He said a Russian cruise missile slammed into the plant and more than a dozen people were wounded. He did not name the company. Videos show thick black smoke rising from a large industrial plant in the far west of Ukraine near the border with Hungary. Russia attacks western Ukraine less frequently than other areas, but the region was the focus of Russia's overnight barrage that included 570 drones and 40 missiles. This comes just days after President Trump met separately with Zelensky and Russia's Vladimir Putin in a bid to end the war. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Kyiv.
Uganda's government says it's agreed to a deal with the Trump administration to take foreign migrants deported from the U.S. Yesterday, the East African country denied knowledge of the agreement, as NPR's Jewel Bright reports.
Uganda's foreign ministry says the deal with the U.S. has been concluded and officials from both countries are now working out a plan to implement it. Officials say unaccompanied children and migrants with criminal records will not be allowed into Uganda under the agreement. This is the third migrant deportation agreement between the U.S. and an African country, following deals with Rwanda and the Kingdom of Eswatini. Critics have accused the Trump administration of forcing African countries to accept deportees from third countries. Last month, Nigeria's foreign minister said the U.S. was trying to use his country and others in Africa as a dumping ground for third country deportees. Joel Bright, NPR News, Lagos.
The White House says more than 550 arrests have been made since President Trump declared a crime emergency in the nation's capital. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports the city's large immigrant population has mixed emotions about the growing operation.
In this largely Latino neighborhood of Washington, D.C., street vendors and food delivery drivers have disappeared. Residents say people are anxious and afraid to go out since ICE and other federal agents started turning up to arrest people.
Yo pienso es muy triste.
It's sad, says Janet Bernal as she pushes a toddler in a stroller. They work hard, pay their taxes, and are treated badly. She and others do support cracking down on criminals. The White House says some arrested immigrants here illegally have been charged with kidnapping, assault, and burglary. But legal rights groups say some with legal status are also being arrested for minor infractions through traffic checkpoints and roving patrols. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, says she will cut her office's budget by over 40%. NPR's Jenna McLaughlin reports this is one of Gabbard's latest efforts to reorganize the intelligence community hub.
Career intelligence officials say their mission is to speak truth to power. However, the former Democratic lawmaker turned head of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or ODNI, has expressed her commitment to aligning the agency with President Trump's policy goals. The ODNI was created after the September 11th terrorist attacks to foster intelligence sharing between U.S. government agencies. Gabbard says she'll slash the agency's costs by over 40% by the end of September, though she didn't identify specific cuts. In a statement, the Democratic vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner of Virginia, says he would welcome the chance to review Gabbard's plans, but expresses concern, arguing Gabbard has a track record of politicizing intelligence. Jen McLaughlin, NPR News.
A federal judge in Manhattan has denied a request from the Trump administration. It's seeking the release of grand jury transcripts from the Justice Department's investigation into late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The DOJ argued the transcripts should be released because of public interest in the Epstein matter. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports.
U.S. District Judge Richard Berman says the government has failed to show any special circumstance that would justify making public grand jury transcripts that are normally secret. Berman says the grand jury materials requested total 70 pages of summary testimony from a single FBI agent, 1 PowerPoint exhibit, and 4 pages of call logs. And that, Berman notes, pales in comparison to the hundreds of thousands of pages of Epstein files in the government's possession. And he says the government's files would better inform the public than the grand jury materials. Berman is the third of 3 federal judges to deny the administration's requests to unseal Epstein grand jury transcripts. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
And you're listening to NPR News from Washington.